Okay. And then my question is in regard to what you call the monolith. We do have a restrictive covenant that says that we can do nothing at that site until we get approvals from the DNR. Have we received a letter of affirmation from the DNR stating that we can proceed with this?
We have been meeting both with We Energies and with the DNR. We've submitted a letter of, I believe the term is a cap modification letter to the DNR, and are currently working through that process with them.
Well, wouldn't it be wise to wait and see what the DNR comes back with before we proceed to phase 1, where we would know if we are allowed to encroach on that monolith?
Actually, it's the opposite. The DNR wants to know what kind of foundations are we going to be looking at, and exactly how are we going to be modifying that cap before they want to give us permission to move forward. So we actually do need to move forward on phase 1 before we get final permission from the DNR. But our initial conversations have been extremely positive. They absolutely want to see something redeveloped on the site, and they don't want to stand in the way of having a site redeveloped. So feel very good about that.
Well, wouldn't before phase 1, wouldn't they be able to tell if we're going to break through the monolith, how much excavation of the remaining contaminated soil would have to be moved?
There's no contamination left on the site, okay? So the monolith took the contaminated soil, mixed it with almost like a concrete, and created a gigantic cementatious monolith that held all the contamination. So there's currently very little contamination on the site. There is some contamination left on the south part of the site that is sort of, I would say, south of the 3rd Street former right-of-way, but currently the site that would house the convention center, arena, hotel area doesn't have open contamination or contaminated soils. They've been contained within that monolith.
Well, that kind of contradicts what's said in the restrictive covenant. Here it says that the cap is provided to retain, and it must be retained in place and properly maintained to act as an engineered barrier for the impacted soils and groundwater which remain below the cap.
Right.
So there still is contaminated soil and groundwater below the cap. And any kind of construction on that site would require going below the cap.
We don't know that. We don't know what the foundations will look like. We don't know where they're going to be placed. We don't know how that monolith will be impacted. And we won't know that until we have a conceptual design. So we can't go to the DNR and ask for permission until we know exactly how the site will be modified. And this is the process we've been working on. We've had meetings with We Energies and the DNR, and they agree that this is the correct process to move forward on. In terms of, understanding, not coming to them with, we can't get full permissions from them until we go through a phase 1 study and we understand conceptually where the foundations will be. Because there's different types of foundations. You can do spread foundations, you can do mat foundations. They all have different cost implications, and so we need to evaluate those and see how they would fit with the site.
Well, I'm afraid it may behoove us to spend $600,000 and have the DNR come back and say, in order to proceed with what you're proposing, that you're going to have to do another $20 million worth of excavation to remove the contamination. I guess I'd like some kind of idea from the DNR that they would approve any kind of construction at that place, because according to the environmental summary, it says here that development restrictions exist. State DNR regulatory approvals are required to disturb the cap, change the land use, or construct, grade, or fill in the site.
Very familiar with the agreements with We Energies. Very familiar with those. Very familiar with our requirements for the DNR. This is what we've been talking to the DNR about. This is what we've been talking to We Energies about. This is the process that we have chosen to move forward on. The DNR has said they cannot give us blanket permission without understanding exactly how we're modifying the site. And we can't give that to them until we're done with phase 1.
Attorney answer.
Phase 1.
Attorney answer. 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 At Go ahead, Mr. Attorney Levy.
If I can just briefly address it, we have retained an environmental attorney, William Scott of Mallory and Zimmerman, and he's been doing work with the city for a long time. When we have brought essentially the same issue up with him that you've brought, he's the one in the room that wonders what we're worried about. He said this is not an unusual site, it's something that can easily be built upon, and he's working through the issues with the DNR and We Energies with us, but he is very clear that whatever environmental issues are there can be worked on, and this is really not a difficult site to work on. So he's very experienced. He's been doing this a lot longer than most of us have been doing what we do, and he's really been very comforting of us when we've raised environmental concerns with him.
Thank you. Anything else, Alderman Weidner? Okay, next we have Alderman Lemke, followed by Alderman Smetana.